Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are calling us from. My name is Simbia Yusuf Mahler, the events manager at Fourth. We have an exciting webinar for you today on building better EV programs, the ins and out of technical assistance for public and private partners. We have a few announcements from the Fort team before I pass it along to our facilitator for today, Jack McGrew, who is the business development manager at Fort. Attendees, we ask that you submit all of your questions via the attendee chat. We will be sharing the webinar presentation as well as a recording and additional resources in the recap email that will be sent out shortly. If you have any questions or if you missed anything, we will be sending that in a short follow-up. And in case you're just tuning in to a Fourth webinar or you've never heard about Fourth, you just found this webinar somewhere and you said, this is a great topic, I need to join. Who are we? Fourth is on a mission to electrify transportation. We bring people together to create solutions, and we do that in our focus areas: access to charging, access to electric cars, access to emerging modes, events and partnerships, and policy advocacy. If you would like to learn more about Fourth, the work we do, and read some of our reports, you can find that information in the link that's been dropped in the attendee chat. And the work we do at Fourth would not be possible without the support of our members and partners and sponsors. If you would like to learn more about partnership, sponsorship opportunities, please reach out to our partnerships and membership manager, Rachel Evacamp. Her email is on screen, and we will be dropping that in the attendee chat. It's a great way to support the great mission and the great work of Fourth. And it's time. Registration is now open for the Roadmap Conference. We're going to be back. We're going to be going to Seattle this year. And if you would like to register and save, this is the best opportunity to do so. Early adopter tickets just dropped. It ends April 15th. So if you want to save almost $700 on registration, this is a great time to do so. We'll drop the link and we'll share more information in the resource. But yes, this is a great time. We want to network. We want to engage with you all while we're in Seattle in September. So please register now, and we'll share more information about the Roadmap Conference shortly. And now I am going to pass it along to our facilitator. Jack, do you want to join me on stage?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Simbi. I appreciate it. What a wonderful intro. Hello, everyone. As Simbi said, I am Jack McGrew. I am a business development manager here at Fourth. I work primarily with our access to charging team. I sit in Chicago, Illinois, do a lot of Midwest work. So I'm really excited to be moderating what I think is a really, really important topic, building better EV programs, the ins and outs of technical assistance for public and private partners. As transportation electrification accelerates, both public agencies and private businesses are navigating complex decisions about program design, infrastructure deployment, and long-term operations. Effective technical assistance can make the difference between a program that launches and one that delivers really lasting impact. Many of us have been on both sides of this, right? We've had great results, and we've also had less than stellar ones. Today's webinar focuses on a solutions-oriented discussion on what TA looks like in successful real-life scenarios. Our excellent panel of speakers come from a broad range of backgrounds. They're going to share real-world insights, pitfalls, and strategies that ensure programs are efficient, equitable, and aligned with broader transportation and climate goals. Each of our panelists are going to have a 5-ish minute presentation on their experiences in the first half, and then we'll jump to the Q&A. Please feel free as we go to submit your questions in the attendee chat, and we'll be sure to share them with our speakers to address. Now, before we kind of pivot to our panelists, we'd like to start with a quick poll question to get things going and really get to know who's here with us today. We want to use this opportunity to gauge who we have and sort of how we want to structure the conversation. So, if you could please let us know if you're involved with technical assistance in any of the following ways. Pretty exciting to see a relative balance of answers here, which is really exciting. Lots of people who have the experience, lots of people who are maybe coming at it from a newer perspective. And I think that today, with the aforementioned wonderful panel of speakers, we're going to be able to sort of talk to all of these different levels of experience. So, thank you. And now I think we're good to turn to our panelists. So, without further ado, first we'll hear from Milena Kabashi, who is the manager of transportation electrification at DTE Energy. She leads DTE Electric's strategy to accelerate EV adoption across all customer segments in Southeast Michigan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack, for that introduction, and good afternoon or morning, everyone, depending where you're calling from. As Jack mentioned, for those who don't know me, my name is Milena Kabashi. I am the Transportation Electrification Manager at DT Electric. Thank you to Fourth and the planning team, Stuart, Simbi, and Jack, for convening today's conversation on practical ways on providing technical assistance that helps programs actually deliver. Really excited to share the stage with a great panel team, high caliber panelists, and also looking to share our utility lens on how we can be a technical assistance partner within the larger EV ecosystem in helping communities and businesses move from goals to design to the interconnection process to operations. But before we get started on that, moving on to the next slide, a quick context on DTE. We're a Detroit based diversified energy company. We're the largest electric utility in Michigan. We have roughly 2.3 million electric customers in Southeast Michigan. We have both generation and distribution, and we're regulated by the Michigan Public Service Commission, or MPSC. So what that means are expenditures and capped earnings need to be approved by the MPSC, and then we recover them from our customers through their electric bills. With that being said, that's why we focus on cost-effective and scalable solutions while also investing roughly $9 billion over the next 5 years to modernize the grid and continue to improve reliability. And for our partners in the larger ecosystem, that regulation makes early coordination and clear scope, such as site, load, and timelines, especially valuable. So moving on to the next slide, here's our vision, our why, which is straightforward. Transportation electrification supports decarbonization, but it has to be reliable, affordable, and equitable. And so our EV vision centers on three utility contribution, mainly on enabling charging network build out, beneficial pricing, and advisory support to guide customers and partners through the decision making process. And we do that while integrating EV load in a way that minimizes system costs and supports cleaner energy outcomes. And that vision matters because the adoption signal that we're seeing in our service territory is getting stronger every year. So, moving on to the next slide, we track EV sales closely in our service territory because it is the leading indicator for where we think technical assistance is needed next, whether it's site planning to grid readiness. And so, what we're seeing happening in our service territory is that the annual passenger EV sales grew roughly 85% in 2025 compared to 2024. That is the highest ever. And we're seeing that customers are increasingly choosing all battery EVs over plug in hybrids. And so, from a utility perspective, the takeaway here is that we're seeing demand rising. So, planning and the streamlined execution support that we bring to the table as utility, and especially for key segments like fleets and workplaces and multifamily, that really becomes critical. And so, our main vehicle for delivering that type of support is through our Transportation Electrification Plan, or TEPs. So moving on to the next slide. We've designed our TEP to expand charging access, especially where cost or site complexity or even awareness could be barriers. We filed our TEP back in 2024. Originally, it was a $145 million investment portfolio for years 2025 through 2028. Um, we are in the process of refreshing, being grabbing the latest market dynamics that are currently happening in this space. But part of this investment that includes roughly about $125 million in rebates to help accelerate charger deployment. And equity is intentional in our TEP design. Over 40% of the funding is designed to support environmental justice communities, including low income customers, disadvantaged communities, rural areas, as well as including public transit and school bus charging. And we're also very intentional in focusing on affordability for all of our base customers. And so the original TP portfolio reflects positive benefits, NPV roughly close to $56 million that's coming from the incremental load. And so rebates help with the dollars, and technical assistance helps our partners clear if there's any friction in scope and siting, interconnection, and implementation. And so moving on to the next slide, here's a preview of how our TEP is currently built. And we really see it as a rebates plus enablement model where the program incentives are paired with education and outreach advisory support and make ready options to reduce those project barriers. And so, in addition to education, we operate across 5 channels or programs that you see in this page. Each has its own angle on technical assistance. For example, home and multifamily charging, we're helping customers navigate and uh, gauge readiness and help them navigate through installation complexity. Public charging, we're looking into helping navigate whether it's engaging hosts to site selection, operations planning, and funding coordination. And then for fleets, we do end-to-end advising. We have in-house advisory services providing total cost of ownership and several layers of implementation support. Um, and so, in making TA tangible with our e-fleet advisory services, this is the model where, especially what we have been seeing in our service territory, local governments often ask us to plug into the advisory services. And so, moving on to the next slide, this is really our TA blueprint. And of note is that through 2025 alone, our e-fleets outreach and advisory approach has helped activate roughly over 400 charger installations. Um, the core value for cities and counties and private partners is that we help translate what starts with an idea or ambition into a sequence plan, looking at vehicle strategy, charging needs, service requirements, and implementation steps. We have a mini video here that if the planning team can help me play. We have a 7-step process that we dispatch with our fleet customers, which is really intentionally practical, and what we have seen really reusable by our partners. So we start out with gathering fleet data to analyze operational needs. We do provide a customized list of available EVs using, we have a fleet model virtual showroom. uh, we then model electric fueling requirements that can vary based on fleet adoption rates, recommend necessary charging options for fleet owner consideration, and we guide the fleet owners through the service connection process. We also analyze potential financial savings, for example, fuel, and facilitate e-fleet charger rebate application implementation. So if I had to provide one sentence or the elevator pitch, is that our TEPs are incentive engine and advisory services are really the technical assistance layer that helps our partners really execute on their projects. That is all I had for presentation material. I'll pause here. I'm really excited about the Q&A portion. And if we don't get to your question live, I'm happy to connect offline. So please feel free to grab my contact information. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jack. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Milena. I already see questions coming in, some really cool and engaging stuff. Love to learn more about your work, and yeah, excited to get into some of that in more detail. Moving along, our next presenter is Mackenzie Love, who is a senior program manager and transportation planner at the Great Plains Institute. She leads GPI's work as a lead partner in the National Charging Smart program, which empowers communities to provide equitable access to EV charging and electrified travel options. Mackenzie?
Hey, thank you, Jack, for that great introduction, and thank you for the rest of you for having me here today. Really pleased to be with you. As Jack mentioned, I'm here to talk about Charging Smart, which is led by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, or IREC, with support from my organization, the Great Plains Institute, or GPI, as that lead partner. On the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the program here, which is a technical assistance program that design supports communities of all sizes and types as they work on their transportation electrification journey. And we've been very intentional in developing the guidance and resources it contains to cover the many facets of electrification, ranging from guidance on planning, regulation, utility engagement, education and incentives, government operation, and shared mobility. And that includes things like transit, car share, and even electric bike share or scooter share. So we try to really take a comprehensive approach to the topic so that folks can have in that one-stop shop. This approach lets us continually adapt to the needs of communities as they evolve over time as well. And it lets us change our technical assistance to provide more focus on high impact topics. For example, we have found over the course of this program, which has been built on many years of precedence, and the example of its sister program, SoulSmart, we found that updating zoning ordinances and streamlining permitting really help communities bring projects to fruition and realize their electrification goals. So we provide more technical assistance there and really kind of a shoulder to shoulder approach with those local government practitioners to undertake those tasks and really meet them where they are in that process. And our goal in doing this is that any community, whether they're establishing their very first vision for how EVs can contribute to their context, or maybe they're on the more advanced side of things and setting purchasing policies and expanding or electrifying their fleet, we hope that any of them can come to this program and find the support that they need. As you can imagine, that means our program has a lot of nuance and contains a huge variety of resources, which is wonderful, but can also be a little bit overwhelming. So this is where the technical assistance piece becomes very important. I like to think of all of the information we've gathered and best practices and expertise from our team and our panel of industry supporters and partners across the country as a library, if you will. It contains a huge amount of information, but you need that librarian to help you make sense of it, to help you find exactly what you need and put it to good use. So that's where our technical assistance providers come in. So how do we do it? We offer a approach to technical assistance that includes a balance of individual one-on-one interactions and also the support of a cohort. We find that this allows us to help communities move their progress along and make sure that we're responsive to what they need at a given moment. But it also respects that many of these local practitioners have a lot of hats and a lot of priorities. And so we want to have the program adapt to what they're able to do and be able to move along with their capacity and make sure they can take advantage of its resources. So starting from right to left here, the one-on-one support, that's really a technical assistance provider like myself or my teammates checking in with a local government practitioner to do some goal setting in the beginning, checking in with them throughout the course of their involvement in the program one-on-one and really diving into some in-depth technical assistance when it's appropriate. Can we help you review your zoning code, etc.? And we back that up with the cohort approach, and that's where we gather multiple local governments or communities of different types into group settings through monthly webinars, office hours where we can talk about whatever is on their mind, and getting together as a collective. And that's really valuable because it gives these peer networks and gives folks opportunities to phone a friend or maybe say, hey, what got past your elected officials review process? Maybe I can use the same language because I have a similar type of community that I work for. So the balance of one-on-one and the group setting has proved to be a really effective way to deliver a huge amount of expertise and hopefully increase the capacity of local government staff so that they don't have to do all that research right off the bat. We can help them and we can connect them with others who can share their lived experience. With that, I'll hand it back to Jack. Looking forward to question and answers with you all.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. That was great. Excited to learn more as well. Coming up next, we have Zara Al-Saloom, who is a program manager under the Colorado Energy Office's transportation team. Her work aims to reduce barriers for multifamily properties, including income-qualified housing, to ensure that multifamily housing residents are charging where they live. Passing it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. As Jack mentioned, I'm program manager with the Colorado Energy Office on our transportation team. I primarily work on multifamily charging, but largely also supporting our level 2 and DC fast charging for communities. So let's dive right in. So just want to highlight one of our longest running charging infrastructure grant programs called Charge Ahead Colorado. It has funded over 6,000 ports to date since 2014. So we are quite experienced as an office, in terms of offering grant funding for community-based level 2 and DC fast charging. So we offer 3 types of lanes for this program: a standard and multifamily housing portfolio lane that is offered in January, May, and September. It's open for 4 weeks. We just wrapped up our round last month, but if you want to apply, hit us up in May. And then we also offer a rolling application for smaller level 2 port requests. And so all site types are eligible with a prioritization for multifamily housing, workplaces, and tourist destinations. And, it's one thing, right, to offer funding, but it's a completely another thing, to expect people to just kind of know what to do off the bat, especially if you are not experienced with EV charging or just, a project of this scale, right? And so we have identified needs, to provide support for grantees. And that is through one of our initiatives called Recharge Colorado. So Recharge provides free coaching services in every county in the state of Colorado. We divided the state up into 6 regions with dedicated coaches. But so many of our applications and applicants needing support are in the 7-county Denver metro area that mid 2025, or I believe fall 2025, we actually ended up splitting the metro area into 2. So there's just a better reach for our applicants in those counties. One of the things that I find pretty important about this program is that Colorado has very diverse geographies and realities, and we're fortunate that our coaches do work where they live. Most of them work where they live, and so they can speak to the feasibility in charging. But another important aspect as well is that Recharge has a large emphasis on equity and language justice. So we have equity advisors with the Monarca Group filling that role. And so they provide support even going beyond Spanish, ensuring that events and application support are accessible for our grantees, our residents, and prospective applicants. So in addition to that support, Recharge coaches also provide education, consumer education about electric vehicles and charging systems, as well as information about utility incentives, grants, rebates, and other opportunities for EV charging projects or EV ownership. And so they do a fantastic job on hosting workshops, webinars, and events to promote electric transportation. So, right. So what does working with a coach look like? Our coaches will usually be reached out by a prospective applicant, or they might do a cold call as well. And so they'll assess site type, not by doing a walk per se, but by just getting general information from an applicant, so they can offer the best guidance possible in terms of needs and use cases that align with Charge Ahead Colorado. Then they'll direct them towards, the application lane that they should apply through. And then they'll also support prospective applicants with navigating rebates and funding sources, as well as provide insight on state and or electrical and building codes to determine what is code required. Colorado has pretty unique, well, not so unique, but we do have new construction codes that do require charging be installed. And so it is pretty meaty in terms of trying to get through a document that is pages and pages long. So they help provide a summarized, condensed version of that. And so afterwards, if grantees or prospective applicants also need help with trying to identify a vendor on how to implement their project, they'll direct them to a Colorado Energy Office trained vendor list that has a list of vendors that have taken a training with our office. So despite all this, right, there are still gaps that we have identified, especially for projects that income qualified multifamily housing, multifamily in general, or just smaller organizations. So we have found many challenges with applying to a program, even during the grant award or project implementation phase, where folks still need a lot of support. And this looks like utility coordination upgrades, lack of EV readiness, issues with ongoing maintenance and operations during and after the project is implemented, and just knowledge gaps between power levels and use cases of different technologies. So with that, that's that's my contact information. Feel free to screen grab it, and I'll hand it back to Jack.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Appreciate it, Zara. We have one more presenter before we jump into the Q&A portion. I know we're eager to get there, but we have a little bit more, and it's good stuff. So we're now going to hear from Anna Guida, who serves as a program manager on Forth's Access to Charging team. Her current work centers on addressing barriers to access for EV charging at multifamily housing developments. Anna?
Thank you, Jack, and thank you everyone who's presented so far. We're going to talk about EV charging at multifamily properties and technical assistance built into that. Forth's charge multifamily program is called Charge at Home. Chargeathome.org is where you can find us, and we'll jump in so that we can cover all the slides. So we're going to start with talking about the importance of EV charging incentives. I know we have a lot of incentive providers on the call. Thank you. Your work is super important. There is a lag in access to home charging for multifamily residents compared to single-family homes. This is super relevant because over 40 million people live in about 23 million apartment homes, which is about 31.4% of all housing in the United States. So super important to make sure that incentives are provided to capture these folks. There's an overall electric transportation adoption issue. So Switch did a survey back in 2024 that showed that multifamily residents are 2.5 times more likely to purchase EVs if they see charging at their home. So that's super significant. And it's an equity issue as well, because affordable housing providers have seen more EV drivers, especially related to drivers for Lyft and Uber, and having access to home charging, multifamily or single family, can make the difference between someone making money or losing money. So super important. Public charging is great, but can be much more expensive, as we all know. Moving right along. So the importance of EV charging incentives that have multifamily built in as a priority is that multifamily EV charging projects are expensive. Multifamily residents, don't have a ton of decision-making power, depending on their situation. Condo board's different, but in general, apartment renters can't just install EV charging. So it's up to educating multifamily decision makers about the importance of EV charging. So providing incentives can bring down the cost of overall EV charging projects, which is something that really stands out to property managers, folks who own buildings, people who are planning for new development projects. And a great way to support these folks who are newer to the EV charging space is technical assistance paired with your EV charging incentive program. So making sure that if you have an EV charging incentive program where you are targeting multifamily properties, if you conduct some outreach to high density multifamily locations, that's great, right? Get this incentive on their radar. And then once it's live, make sure that you do what you can to promote. Super, super helpful to connect with local and regional multifamily affiliates. Like we connect with Multifamily Northwest here in Portland. They serve Washington as well, and they've been a really great resource. So why is technical assistance important? As all the presenters have mentioned already, there's a knowledge gap, and with multifamily decision makers, that is super significant. It's one of the biggest barriers to EV charging, helping them understand the importance of it, how it's great for their property, how it keeps them competitive, and how residents will, eventually eventually making choice about where they live based on EV charging. The reason why multifamily is so unique is that each site is very different based on different parking configurations, if the building is new or existing, how do folks, charge multiple EVs overnight. There's a lot of misunderstanding about electrical capacity, especially at existing buildings. So education is super important about options. So since multifamily is a relatively new amenity and a really, really complicated one, it's important to provide technical assistance. Okay. So this is more of so this is kind of repeating the previous slide. All of these slides will be shared, so feel free to go through and review this information if I can't cover all of it. But part of the quality technical assistance, it really empowers applicants to make informed decisions and providing technical assistance at the project level. So for one multifamily decision maker at a property, empowers them to make more decisions for the rest of their properties in their portfolio. So it's not a one-off thing, it's an ongoing education effort. So TA can help people understand that existing buildings can have EV charging with load management and energy management systems. And also technical assistance from the incentive provider can generally provide third-party unbiased guidance, which is super important so that multifamily properties get the best product for their site. Okay, and here are some recommendations, and then I'll wrap up. For incentive providers, ensure the TA is built into your program and your budget early on. There's different kinds of TA. There's application TA, there's also project level. Include low-level chargers, smart outlets, low-level 2, to your qualifying products lists. Several incentive providers on this call do that already. Wonderful job. Conduct outreach to communities with high levels of multifamily charging. And then conduct outreach and provide special resources to affordable housing properties, special support. And consider earmarking or reserving or having a goal of percentage of incentive funding to go specifically to multifamily. And then I will not talk about this last slide, but Charge at Home has a free EV charging consultation program that's basically open TA for any multifamily decision maker. So you can learn more at chargeathome.org/free-consultations or email me. So thank you so much. And if there's any question I can't answer during the Q&A section, I can meet with my team and we'll coordinate and get you an answer soon. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack.
Thank you, Anna. That was great. Really, really good background there, really good information. Yeah, and I just appreciate you speaking on that. So now let's jump to the question and answers portion of the webinar. Speakers, if you could please unmute your mics and join me back on this virtual stage. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think let's go ahead. We got a number. We have a couple questions I want to talk about. We got a number in the chat that I think are really, really good and valuable to connect on as well. Let's start with something sort of basic. A couple of you got into this specifically, but is there an example or sort of what taught you that technical assistance was really important to your programming?
Yeah, I can start if that's cool with everybody. So I speak mostly multifamily. So for the Charge at Home program, we spent about 2 years building that program, meeting with multifamily folks, national affiliates, local, also residents to understand like what the needs are. We built a bunch of education materials that are more passive, like toolkits that are really great for each market segment, project builder tool. These are all useful, but the second that we launched the consultation program, TA requests just came flooding in. And we were able to identify like certain patterns, the kinds of folks who were asking questions, which were mostly condo representatives. So basically we just tried something and then we saw the benefit of it. And now we're really, really pushing the importance of providing that service as an incentive provider. So
I could chime in as well from the utility side of things, and building on Anna's point really on multifamily complexity. We kind of see the same pattern on the utility side, and really just the incentives alone don't move projects. And if customers and our site hosts and partner do get stuck on the how, whether it's understanding how to right size charging to site constraints or navigating the utility interconnection path with electricity now as the new source of fuel. And that's why, alongside our rebates that we bring to the table, we're leading on to the advisory services as the technical assistance layer that looks to fill the gap or connect the dot to turn the interest that we're seeing from different customer segments into actually installing those charging. And that's especially true for where we have dedicated advisory services for fleets, the multifamily, and other harder to serve sites that can have significant complexities.
For us on this, state government side, is that you can have all the guides and cheat sheets, but this is complex. Whether we as experts want to admit it or not, EV charging is very complex. For multifamily, for the smaller organizations that try to do community charging, and it's great that we have a program like Recharge Colorado because it is individualized coaching. But often what we're seeing is that a lot of the questions are the same. It is the same across the board in terms of what is the difference between level 2 and fast charging? Well, why can't I do fast charging at my property? Because I think it's going to have a really good economic development effect. And they're just realities that we have to admit that are existing. And so looking towards the future, what it's taught us is that it really has to be at a cohort basis, right? A lot of folks have the same questions. We want to provide consistent information on how to get projects moving and not falling through once they're in the middle of trying to get it deployed. So.
Jack, I'll round us out here. But my fellow panelists did so many wonderful things, but I just have a little bit to add. How we got started is at the Great Plains Institute. I sit in the communities team. That's our group. And really our objective is to work with local governments, and we try to take things that we learn from them and make them scalable and replicable. Like Zara was just pointing to with, the questions are the same. How can we take things we've learned and make it useful? So that's kind of our roots. But I wanted to just quickly give an example of what really drove home the importance on this topic. We have some support from General Motors to work with under-resourced or otherwise disadvantaged communities and to give them additional technical assistance beyond what the core Charging Smart program can offer, because those folks with limited resources have so many competing priorities for their time. So we were able to create a new fellow position to really give a lot of one-on-one, direct hands-on kind of engagement with some small communities in Indiana. And they were able to go from the very beginnings of interest in electrification to really having set visions and reviewing their zoning codes and making those really impactful changes. I included a blog about that in the follow-up materials if you want to learn more, but it's just amazing to see how additive it can be in the real world to show how important TA is. So
Yeah,
back to you, Jack.
wonderful. I actually have to chime in because we haven't connected about this, but I was reading that blog, and one of the communities you helped was Lafayette, Indiana, which is my hometown. So I was excited to see that and really cool real world impact happening from that. But yeah, so you guys highlighted this, but just following up on a couple, if you have other examples or some of the people who maybe didn't get the chance to do an example, I'd love to hear sort of additional thoughts on what your TA looks like in practice and an example of how it was executed. I really love these real world considerations and would love to hear you speak some more on.
Well, maybe I can kick us off because I also saw a question that could be related that asking how effective has the been. So I can share for us at the utility how we're seeing technical assistance is about providing really a repeatable step-by-step customer roadmap, and we're often gauging where do we meet the customers. We have some very sophisticated customers that really just need maybe high level total cost of ownership analysis to some customers that are really early on in their journey. And so we're really looking to cater to help reduce any uncertainty and help the projects move along from what could be that initial interest to implementation. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation minutes, through 2025, our e-fleets outreach and advisory services, we did help activate over 400 fleet charger installations that is directly tied to the advisory services and the TA that comes along with it, using that structured 7-step process that I mentioned earlier, whether it's assessing fleets and vehicle selection to charging design, as one of my co-panelists mentioned earlier. We often hear, I want the fastest charger possible. Whatever you have available, I want the highest rebate. And that's where kind of we sit down and, well, let's look at to understand what does your use case say without necessarily stranding investments and dollars and not really getting the right use for their fleet. And so we pair that hands-on support. We also have a self-servicing total cost of ownership tool, again, for customers that do feel confident in navigating that. It can help them build content to get internal buy-in and some of that decision making that can help make faster and more confident decisions. Um, and what's also important though is that those same technical assistance learnings, they don't really live in a silo, and we're seeing this across all of our programs, or whether it's single family homes to multifamily to public fast charging. We've deployed an additional 500 chargers in 2025 alone, but we're intentionally ensuring that we're cross-pollinating insights from one program to another, from one customer interaction to other, whether it's NEVI funding to coordinating clean school bus rebates or grants, and really looking to understand how do we right size infrastructure, how do we clarify timelines and navigate whatever processes that come along, whether it's the coordination with other funding to interconnection. The technical assistance is really where that model can scale across segments and help improve the customers move to operationalized chargers.
Yeah, I can also hop in real quick. So everyone's kind of going over this, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but I can talk a little bit more about the different kinds of TA. So there are, TA for just applying. The actual application process can be super, super helpful, especially for incentive providers to alleviate some of that workload for your staff. And then also the project level, which is what a lot of us have spoken about, like that one-on-one guidance per property to really help them to understand their options. And something to think about is, incentive programs usually go in rounds. Something that would be, I think, super smart is to explore providing TA between rounds as well, if you have funding to allow for that, because then that allows folks to plan for their EV charging project so that by the time the incentive program rolls open the next round, they'll be prepared, right? Because we know this stuff takes time. So just some thoughts. Yeah.
Great. I'll jump in here with a real tangible example. Our TA aims to help communities prepare very early on in their approach to transportation electrification. And this has illuminated a couple of barriers for us having to do with permitting, streamlining the permitting process, and updating your zoning codes can really help people move projects along, as I mentioned earlier. So even before they have a specific project in mind, taking those proactive steps has been really impactful. So one of the guidance pieces in our program is to review your zoning requirements and identify things that may intentionally or unintentionally prevent EV charger deployments and compile those findings in a memo. And so that can really help get communities thinking about what might be going on in their zoning ordinances that might create complexities for projects. And we provide TA in a couple of different ways. It could be high level, like what's an example of an unintentional barrier? Well, that could be classifying EVSE or the charging stations in the same way that you classify a motor fueling station, which might trigger some unnecessary types of reviews. So that could be an unintentional but still create problems. But we might also provide TA in the case of a community that doesn't have a lot of capacity by reviewing their zoning code and helping them complete that memo and then talking them through what we found as subject matter experts. So just trying to adapt to what they need, but engaging with them early on through, as my colleague said here, really replicable steps that convey those best practices we've seen over a huge number of communities.
I think for us, right, provide an example of how recharge works, but I would like to offer of how TA shouldn't operate, and it's really in terms of who is the intended user of it, right? I mean, Anna alluded right to multifamily. That is such a big market segment that struggles with trying to implement a project. But it's really those requests from very large organizations, such as, for example, like I'm gonna rhyme it with Pamazon. They like folks like that don't necessarily need technical assistance because they have the grant writers, they have the technical experts in house. So it's really thinking about who would you think doesn't really have the expertise or knowledge, and allotting your time as the person delivering the TA. So
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. This is really, really good. Moving along, I want to be cognizant of time, and we have a handful more questions. So this was to DTE specifically, but I think it kind of applies to all. So if you have an answer, please hop in as well. But how effective has the assistance model been in advancing electrification across your service area?
Yeah, I tied it into the the how the TA looks in practice question earlier, but again, just looking at how we bring advisory services or TA really in kind of meeting the customers where they are, um, to whether they want to understand what does fueling look like for their specific site, or even for multifamilies, helping whether it's the property owners to the tenants navigate this is a challenging segment, and how to bring charging options at their site. And so really working, understanding the use case, and then bringing a toolkit of resources, really, whether it's our rebates or additional grant funding. In here in Michigan, we are our Eagle, it has issued an RFP where they're covering uh, up to 80% of those project costs, and these can be some sizable projects. And so, not just bringing awareness, but then also helping them doing the hand holding on the technical specific components of the project.
Wonderful. Moving along. So this was a question again specifically for Zara, and they were wondering how the CEO works with utilities like Excel, and if there are any best practices for sort of state organizations or utility collaborations to get charging in multifamily housing.
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. So we do work pretty closely with Excel and other agents or other utilities in the state. But what that looks like is ensuring that whatever their offerings are, that they are stackable with our grant. And so that is such a great practice, right, to maximize all the available funding and allowing stackability, especially in the cases of multifamily housing or income qualified housing. And so, of course, not every utility, has an offering. And so, um, Colorado is, in a pretty unique position where a lot of our work is state funded through retail delivery fee. And that's just a fee that we collect from, say, like Amazon deliveries or Grubhub or rideshare. And so we're pretty well situated, right? Um, and so, one of those things is also trying to align on enhanced funding as well. And so ensuring that we are looking at the same territories equally in terms of impact and in terms of prioritization. And so we have state resources that they utilize to ensure that we are speaking the same language in terms of charging. And so that way as well, like our coaches and our staff, we're familiar with each other's programs and can speak to that. So Excel can speak quite well to Charge Ahead and our other programs, just as we can speak pretty well to what they offer for commercial or multifamily rebates. But establishing the relationship is, first and foremost the most important thing, and having consistent contact. And yeah.
Wonderful. Another one that I think is really important is we had a question in there that was about sort of how we engage with community-based organizations, right? So, what types of work do your organizations individually, kind of do in-house versus who are you engaging with CBOs, and how do you make that determination?
I can kick us off. So for us, we have an in-house advisory services team, or project managers that not only obviously help facilitate the rebates, but also bring in the set of resources and knowledge in-house, whether it's being liaison with our interconnection team to where there are state grants or funding or federal grants to kind of allow the stackability, to doing the total cost of ownership analysis. And we found, because we are in this very dynamic, unique space, and kind of having the ability to connect all of that technical knowledge in house and being able to speak the same language, whether it's talking to site hosts or electrical contractors to customers, is building that capability in-house so that we continue to grow and scale as need be. Often, if looking externally, then you're probably even looking from a cost perspective, issuing an RFP and like look into maybe having a sliver of services, being accommodated, whether we can continue to grow and build in-house.
Wonderful.
I can chime in quickly, just real quick. So Fourth does a lot of support and outreach to CBOs. When we've been doing a lot of targeted outreach right now to like affordable housing and CBOs that provide affordable housing. We have a lot of great work with like car share programming at Fourth. We also do a lot of great bike share, lending libraries. So when we do that outreach, we also include our technical assistance programming so that that information can pass through networks and reach the folks who need it most, which is an example of how we do that. I also want to thank GM for funding our multifamily work, which has made the TA program possible.
Yeah, I'll
Great.
just add really quickly, we engage with a lot of partners through the Charging Smart program, especially we work with Fourth, we work with a couple of other organizations, but also with the entities that are on the ground in the community, because it's really helpful to have somebody who knows the locality or localities very well, and will be there with them even beyond a specific cohort for them to return, for the community to return to. So having those trusted local partners like CBOs or MPOs even is beyond valuable.
Wonderful. Very, very helpful. We had a couple of questions in the chat sort of about people who are launching different TA programs for multifamily customers, and to sort of sum up where they're at, different situations, but everybody's kind of interested in like talking about what should TA providers sort of consider when providing services, advice on activating tenants and getting them excited about EV charging to get their buildings to do TA. I know we have a lot of multifamily experts on this call. I just wanted to see if you guys had thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think Colin asked it. So Charge at Home actually is a iteration of a previous project called BCI MUD, also funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and that was more of a tenant focus. Based on findings from that project, it was actually found that engaging with multifamily decision makers was more impactful in terms of getting EV charging, but it's still important to engage residents. Fourth does ride and drives, which is a really great opportunity to get people excited about EV charging. You could do those at multifamily properties. So if you have that in your budget, that's a super awesome way. Also, I just dropped the Resident Empowerment Toolkit in the chat, which is super helpful if you can get that out to the correct folks. And additionally, something that is really helpful is if you have one resident advocate who's interested in EV charging, resident surveys are really, really good to share with those folks. They can gather information about their neighbors. And then we also have a project builder tool. Residents can basically build a financial case and present to their property managers, HOAs, about the benefits and the ROI for providing EV charging at their properties.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Sorry.
No,
if we
please.
don't have time, that's okay.
No, please.
Yeah, similar to Anna, Recharge offers ride and drives. They do a lot of outreach to multifamily, especially CHAFA and some income qualified housing organizations as well. I see a floating emoji from Mikey, who is one of our Recharge coaches, because he does a lot of this work. And so in doing that, developing, surveys as well for both the property managers and residents, just to gauge interest, as well as, like a little how-to, like I have charging now on my property. Well, how do I use it? So those are fantastic ways to market it. But I mean, ride and drives always kill it, right? Because once you experience what driving an EV is like, it really does, establish that this could be a reality for a lot of tenants.
Perfect. Wonderful. I know that we are almost right at about time, and I want to be cognizant of folks' folks' days. So I'll go ahead and pass it back to Simbi to wrap us up. But I just know, in case there were some questions that weren't answered, I know that there was a lot that we got to here. All of us are happy to connect individually. Like we said, these slides will circulate, and also you can see all of our lovely emails on the screen, and we would love nothing more than to talk to you guys about individual questions or situations or anything moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jack. And as Jack said, we will be sharing all of the resources that were linked in the chat. We will send you all the recap email. And I know we didn't answer all of the questions, but we'll make sure that our speakers have those questions and can follow up with you all. But want to do one more thank you to Anna McKenzie, Zara, Melina, Jack for this webinar today and kicking off the conversation. And again, we always say an hour is not enough time. Maybe we host a workshop on this and we have an hour to discuss each facets of technical assistance. But thank you all so much for joining us today. And I'm going to vamp a little bit so you all can get the contact information, but we will send a recap email and all of this information will be there. But we do hope you can join us next month for Keeping EVs Within Reach, Policy Shifts, Messaging, and Affordability. We will have another great conversation for you all in April, and we hope to see you all then. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a good rest of your day. Have a great day, everybody, and looking forward to seeing you all also at Roadmap. Register now and save. Thank you all.
Bye.